Welcome to Touchline Talk, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes into the minds of football managers, club leaders, administrators, and coaching experts, offering deep insights into the game's tactical and operational side. And today's guest is Vince Ganzberg. Vince, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, I'm gonna run through the list, and it's a lengthy one, and I'm definitely gonna miss some things, but Vince has been in and around the game for a long time and had various influential roles. And what's such a joy for me is that we literally live like a town away from each other. But Vince is an Indiana Soccer Hall of Fame inductee, 4-year letter winner as a player on the Bethel College soccer team. Now, we've talked about how I was at a rival school for a little while there, even though we weren't playing at the same time. He was the Ron Paulson Award winner and 3-time team captain, named to the NAIA All-District Team 3 times, named to the NCCAA All-District Team 4 times, holds his USSF A license, NSCAA Premier Diploma, and also has his National Youth License as well. He created... Some of you have benefited from this. I know many of us have. Our coaches that were around created an online learning program for Indiana Youth Soccer, which was adopted by U.S. Soccer, Youth Soccer Region 2, U.S. Youth Region 2 coaching chair of youth soccer, director of coaching for Indiana Soccer for many years, presenter at 14 straight NSCAA conventions. I think that number has probably grown since that time to maybe like 20-something.
Yeah.
Received the Ron Wig Award from U.S. Youth Soccer Region 2, leader of current F license project for U.S. Soccer, created the F license course. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is very much an expert in youth development for U.S. Soccer, was a coaching education instructor for U.S. Soccer from 2007 to 2018, served as the director of coaching education for United Soccer coaches from 2015 to 2023, and since 2023 and current role has served as the director of coaching education for U.S. Club Soccer, and then gives his time to various different clubs over the years. Vince, thanks for joining us. Thanks for all you've done for the game. I know many of us have probably gone through one of your courses that you lead. I know I'm always talking to him. He's like, I just got done doing a B license or a C license or a D license course around the country. So thanks for all you're doing for the game.
Thank you.
All right, Vince, in this series, we've been asking this question just to get things started before we get into your story. If you could change one rule in soccer, what would it be and why? At any age level, any format, what would it be and why?
Wow. I'd have to give that a good thought. I mean, the offside law, just maybe extending the line a little bit beyond midfield, kind of like the old NASL days. I thought that was a very creative way to try and get more goals. But I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, the game is, the laws of the game were made a long time ago, and it's amazing how even though they've changed over the years, but they're still very much true.
Yeah.
For example, the touchline rule and all that came about. Matter of fact, I think the offside law was actually one of the first laws. It was actually before the touchline, because the English deemed that it was disrespectful to score with your opponent at your back.
Wow.
So the offside law was actually one of the first laws, and then the touchline law came in.
I love that. A little trivia, history lesson for you too. So Vince, how did you, we've heard so much, and now, obviously, spoiler alert, played in college and has gone on to coaching and then coaching education, but kind of give us those building blocks as how did you first get involved with the game of soccer? How did you kind of fall in love with the game? Well,
that's probably need to ask my dad, because what happened was my dad used to coach a lot of the sports at the YMCA on the east side of Indianapolis, the Randsburg YMCA, and they were starting soccer, and they asked him to coach because he coached basketball, he coached football, he just coached, and so he's like, yeah, sure, I'll try. He goes, I know nothing about the game, and so then we're going to have a coaching clinic. Why don't you come on and watch that? And so my dad was a factory worker, and he also was a musician at night. So when he came home, he goes, hey, I'm going to this coaching clinic. Do you want to go?
And we want to thank our new affiliate partner, Total Football Analysis. Discover in-depth football analysis tactics and scouting reports at Total Football Analysis. Stay ahead with expert insights and data-driven articles. So go to totalfootballanalysis.com, discount code SCS30 to get 30% off any purchase or subscriptions. You can check that referral link as well in the show notes. That's Total Football Analysis, 30% off any purchase or subscription with the discount code SCS30 to get that 30% off.
And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because for me, it was just time spent with my dad.
Yeah.
And I was in 4th grade, 5th grade. I think it was 5th grade. And so I go, and I'm like, he's like, do you want to play soccer? I'm like, no, I don't want to play soccer. Right? Because I was a basketball guy. I thought it was going to be Billy Keller. He was my hero growing up as a kid. And so I was at the clinic. My dad was learning, and it was actually the Indiana University men's soccer staff and players that were actually given the clinic.
Wow.
So I'm sure George Perry, who you had on this show, was there.
Yeah.
And I remember they had us participate in the clinic, and I've never kicked a ball in my life, but I'm like, oh, it looks fun. So I went out and I just joined a little bit, and one of the I think it was one of the coaches said, "Hey, you're pretty good," and I'm like, well, I've never played, and so on the way home, I said, "Dad, is it too late to sign up for soccer?" And he goes, "No, we'll sign you up." So you think he paid the late $5 fee and got me signed up, and that was it. After that, I was kind of hooked, and just ended up playing recreation soccer.
Yeah.
And then my dad also started, after the YMCA, he started the league in Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he was one of the 3 people that started the league in Lawrence. We had the whole concession stand on my refrigerator, which was pretty cool when I was a kid. And I was playing in a tournament. We used to have this thing called the Peace Games. And it was like an Olympic competition with all different sports between us and Scarborough, Canada. I don't know if they still do it or not anymore, but it was a big deal to make the Peace Games team. So they had a tournament, and so at Lawrence, we put together like a group of all-stars. And it's funny because there's another guy on the team named Chris Johnson who coached at IUPUI for many, many, many years, just retired, had a great career as a coach. I think he was also on that field too with me.
Wow.
And I happened to be playing against a guy named Mark Beringer, who was playing for the Jewish Community Center, and they were like the best. And the guy that was coaching the Jewish Community Center was a guy named Dr. Alan Kettner. So he basically, after the game, he came up to me and he said, "Why don't you come to the Peace Games tryout tomorrow?" I'm like, okay. So I go, and I guess I impressed enough to make the team. He didn't coach a team. There was a guy named Gary Roberts, who was a legend on the east side of town. And so we went to Canada. We played against Canada. And then on the way back home, Dr. Kettner was on the bus, and he said, "Do you want to try? I'm starting a new club called Dynamo. And would you want to be a part of that?" And so I said, sure. And so I tried out, and I was like, I think it was my 9th grade year. And I had a choice between A team and B team. And I'm like, well, I'll play a lot on the B team, but I want to be on the A team because I want to be coached by you. So I played on the A team, and Dr. Alan Kettner was a very influential person in my life, and a wonderful man. He was one of those coaches that, these are old landline days, like we didn't play soccer year round back then. I played fall soccer, and then I got ready for high school basketball, and then we played spring soccer, and the summertime we just had off. But Doc would always keep in touch, and Mark Beringer was also on the team, the Cathedral Girls high school coach, legend coach, and great guy, great human being, and one of my best friends. And we just kind of grew up together, playing together. And then what happened was, my grades, I let them slip during my high school year and my senior year, in high school, and I kind of lost my opportunity to play college soccer at Manchester, because that's where I was going to go. And then I ended up going to IUPUI. All of a sudden, out of the blue, there's a coach called from Bethel College, called my house and said, "Hey, we hear you're just going to IUPUI and you're not playing soccer. I'm like, well, I played on the club team. And he goes, well, would you be interested in coming up and playing soccer here? And I'm like, sure. I had no idea where Bethel was. I didn't care. I just wanted to play. So Dr. Alan Kattner is the one who told him about me. Said, hey, you got this guy down here that's not bad. And so the coach was Joe Veal. Joe Veal basically offered me a scholarship, and I went to Bethel. And I played at Bethel 4 years, very fortunate.
Yeah.
Then after I graduated with a degree in education.
Okay.
So I was a high school teacher and coach. And through this, I taught at South Bend St. Joe. So I used to see the Golden Dome from my classroom. And right across the street was Notre Dame. And Notre Dame had a men's soccer coach by the name of Mike Berticelli. Mike's kid, Nino, was going to play for me the next year. So Coach Berticelli came to one of the games I was coaching. So I was a high school teacher, a high school coach. And we're playing an inferior team. I'll never forget it. We're playing a team that we should be just destroying, and we don't. And go in the locker room. My assistant forgets to close the door, and I just unload on my players. And I'm 23, 24 years old, and I thought I was Bob Knight. And because back then in the 90s, everyone else thought they were Bob Knight too. And Berticelli was in the stands. And after the game, someone said, hey, Coach Berticelli wants to meet you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was scared to death because, I mean, we did score 6 goals in the second half. And so I remember he was a big man, 6'3", 6'4", coach at Notre Dame men's soccer. And he put his arm around me and he said, can I have a copy of your halftime speech? And I said, oh, sure. He said, because my Notre Dame guys can score 6 goals and a half. I'm set for life. And then he said something that completely, when I look back, changed me. And he said, have you ever taken a coaching course? And I said, no, I've never taken a coaching course. So he convinced the high school parents to sign me up for the NSCAA National Diploma. And that's where I learned how to take all my soccer thoughts, all my, my knowledge and put it into a meaningful practice.
Yeah.
And, I started coming back, learning how to plan practices better, how to be a better coach, how to be a better person as well. And it was all because, it all started with my dad. Sorry, it's a long story, but it all started with my dad. And then it went to Dr. Kattner and then Coach Berticelli. And I always tell people, God put these people in my life and I'm forever thankful. And because without those people, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Well, and I think there's so much in the game. Obviously, people want to win. We're competing. But the sandbox of growth and development that the game or any sport can provide, right? We're just specifically talking about soccer. But the relationships that you just mentioned, the invitations to try out, the invitations to come to this other tryout, the invitation to coach for the first time, or hey, have you ever thought about a coaching education course? These kinds of things really can shape not just your love for the game, but the trajectory of your life, your career. I mean, that's definitely been part of your story in a significant way. Now, talk to me about this. There is this tension of coaching, and a lot of times people who've been, maybe they play, successful club player, high school player, college player, and they give coaching a shot and they're like, this just isn't for me, right? And then there's people who maybe weren't that great of players or didn't play at a high level or whatever, and are amazing, phenomenal coaches in general. So talk to us about this tension of getting involved in coaching and the importance of learning, through these coaching education opportunities, how that helps somebody kind of, like to your point, kind of get all those thoughts out. What role does coaching education really play in the game today?
Well, that's number one. There's a saying, really good coaches can transfer knowledge into understanding. And that's what coaching education can provide, even though, and a lot of, you said, a lot of coaches that are really great, were really great players, or they have a hard time going into the coaching, into that coaching seat, because they don't, things come easy to them, where the player that really wasn't, maybe they weren't as great as that player, as good as that player, but they had to work at it and they had to learn.
Yeah.
And there's a friend of mine who's a college professor, and she said, Vince, remember this phrase, A's and B's will please, but C's and D's will get degrees. And her point was, when she used to give, like, the kids would turn in a paper, and she would red ink it, and they would get a C or a D on it, and then they get it back. But if they got all straight A's in high school, they freaked out. They didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And where the kids that struggled a little bit in high school, their road to success was a little bumpy. They actually learn how to persevere and get through it. So to your point about how some coaches struggle that have, are really great players, it's because the game came so easy, and it's really hard for them to teach someone else how to do what they did.
Yeah.
So, and then the others, they learn. They watch and they learn. But as far as, the tension is, I think a lot of people, first off, I think I share this with you on the phone. A piece of paper doesn't make a person a great coach. Right. What makes a person a great coach is if they can connect with, a child or a human being, or, they're their champion. They make sure that no kid walks around with a hole in their heart, and they encourage them. So, and they can teach them. Some of the best teachers are, people that like take a really complicated task and simplify it. For example, they might say, hey, when you dribble the ball, keep it within a hula hoop of your body, right? As opposed to going through all these mechanics of how to do something. If they can just use images or metaphors, those are really effective ways to teach, and anybody can do that. Yeah. But the main thing is that, a really good coach will make kids feel like they belong, feel like they're welcomed, and feel like that they believe in it. I mean, that's what Dr. Katner did for me. I mean, I was way behind everybody else on the team, but he inspired me to keep practicing. So I go out after after school, and I go out and I juggle. And we used to live in apartment complexes, and I would kick the ball against the wooden gate that was in the back and break them. And, my mom would come out and yell at me, but I loved it, and I loved it. And that's what I tried to remember when I was coaching is I need to inspire kids, to love the game.
Yeah. Talk to me about this, evolution in your career of gravitating, to being a coach, and then moving into becoming a coach educator, right? Of coaching the coaches, if you will, in so many ways. And just talk about that transition a little bit. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this. A lot of our listeners are involved with U.S. youth soccer or youth soccer in North America to some capacity, and saying, hey, how do you go from this coach thing to a coach educator, and what does that path look like, and what did it look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that a lot, by the way. How did you get to where you are now? Yeah. And a lot of it was, I coached. I learned how to coach. And I went from coaching South Bend St. Joe, which honestly a monkey could have stood on the sideline and they were going to win games because the kids were so good, to starting a brand spanking new program in LaPorte High School. And so I had to go back and relearn, like, okay, how do I teach these kids that should already have the techniques and the decision-making down, but they don't. And I spent 8 years at LaPorte, and that actually helped shape me, as far as coaching. And so that helped. And then I went through coaching. I did that. I was a high school teacher for 14 years. And then what happened, a life event happened. And then I ended up being the state director of coaching for Indiana youth soccer. So I left teaching, and that was 2002, and I basically just worked for one of the greatest men that I love and still love, and that's Don Rawson, who's now in Virginia. Worked for him, and also worked for Danny Capsalis. He was my colleague, and we worked at the Indiana Youth Soccer office, and that's where I learned how to start teaching the D's and the E's and we didn't have the old F back then. We would have these courses called youth modules, which was, in my opinion, the best course that we ever had was, and it was really a 2-hour, 3-hour course for the recreation coach.
Yeah.
And I go all over the state of Indiana. I go to Lagodi, Indiana, one night, and I'd be in Fort Wayne another night. And so I just use my passion for teaching because I love teaching.
Yeah.
I love the classroom when I was a school teacher. And so I just kind of replaced that with being a coach educator.
Yeah.
And from 2002 to 2013, I worked for the state office or Indiana Youth Soccer. And then I don't know what I was thinking, but I went back into high school coaching and teaching. And it was wonderful. I went to Chittard and I coached them for 2 years and taught there for 2 years. And it was good because I kind of got back in the classroom and, learned some methods and updated myself, if you will. But when you're not in the classroom for 10 years and you go back in, it was a real challenge. And so what happened was U.S. Soccer, because I was teaching not only NCAA courses, but I was teaching federation courses as well when I was at the state office for that 10-year period. And I think I built a reputation as someone that was not only just a good educator, but hopefully an educator that cared for people and treated the candidate or student coach, as we call them now, with respect. Yeah. And, there's a saying, relationships over rigor, and I've always tried to create relationships with the student coaches or candidates first, because if I'm going to challenge them, I have to build that relationship and trust first. But so after my period at Chittard, U.S. Soccer reached out and said, hey, we want to create this F license, and it's going to be online for 5 to 8-year-olds. Would you be interested in designing it? So I was looking a way to get back out of the classroom. Don't get me wrong. I loved teaching. I loved the kids, but I was governed by bells and walls, and I just felt trapped. And anybody that's a teacher probably can understand. But so then I worked for U.S. Soccer as a 1099, believe it or not. But then I ended up kind of overseeing the D license curriculum, the E license curriculum, and I even kind of helped with the C license curriculum. But I was teaching courses all across the country. So I did that for 3.5 years, actually while living here in Brownsburg. And the F license actually was built in a little outdoor patio right over there on South Jefferson Street. So that's, and then from there, what happened was U.S. Soccer went, I interviewed for a full-time coaching ed position, and everything went well, but then they wanted me to move. And I called my good friend Ian Barker at United Soccer Coaches and said, hey, do you have anything? And he's like, yeah. He goes, you've turned me down 3 times, so but if you want to do it, let's do it. So I worked for Ian Barker and United Soccer Coaches, formerly the NSCAA, for 8 years. And then just recently in 2023, as you mentioned, I went to U.S. Club. And it just, how I got, I don't know if I'm at a certain level. I always think I'm never at a level that I want to get to, but I think it's just years and years of just teaching courses, and I've been very blessed to have been able to teach courses all around the country as a full-time profession. So, it's weird how this kid that grew up in Lawrence, Indiana, ended up being a national coaching education director for a major organization like U.S. Club Soccer. It's
awesome.
It's, I think back, I'm like, my goodness, how'd that happen?
I think there's a lot of times where people think, well, Vince just set out to do that. He just set out to be this, influential coach educator. And, there's no prescription here, right? This is more descriptive of just amazing opportunities, saying yes at the right times, and then seeing this career kind of form and shape with your love for educating others, the love for the game that grew over time. And then, I think to your point, relationship over rigor, right? Prioritizing relationships, prioritizing the transformational side that sport really can bring in a world and in a space of youth sports that can come across oftentimes as very transactional. It's refreshing when there's that relational side to it. And I love seeing the good guys get the opportunity to have an influence on so many of us. I mean, I'm telling you, if you have done any of these courses, whether Vince was facilitating your course or not, Vince likely had a hand in the curriculum and the content. And so a lot of us have benefited from that, man. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Vince, what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities in youth development with the game today?
Well, I mean, there's a lot. I think a lot of our size in our country doesn't help us when it comes to development over winning.
Yeah.
For example, like when Germany lost to Brazil in 2002, they did this thing called a reboot. So they completely reshaped their youth, their small-sided game formats, and all that, because they realized that they were just falling behind, and they wanted more creative players and all that. So Germany is the size of maybe Indiana, Illinois. I mean, together, if that. And so a lot of these countries that, even though they're small, they develop great players. Well, they can pretty much shape everything. So, but here, we have, I think USU soccer probably has about 1.4 million to play, and we have 700,000 kids registered with US Club Soccer. So that's 2 million. And then you got organizations like AYSO, and then there's SAY, all these these organizations where kids can sign up. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot. So the federation is, for years, has pretty much just been kind of hands off with development.
Right.
So when it comes to what I think the big problem, there's a few issues. Number one, you mentioned it. Some coaches still take a transactional approach to the game, as opposed to a transformational approach to the game. Mm-hmm. And but that's also our culture. Yeah. And we're about winning, and we want to win. And by the way, kids should want to win. Yeah. And I think I know competition's great for kids. Yeah. As long as it's bridled and it's kept in check, it's a great thing for kids. It's got to be healthy, and we're seeing way too many unhealthy environments out there on the fields. When kids are playing, you got coaches for some reason getting red carded, and they're yelling at a 14-year-old referee, and they're getting red carded because they disagreed with the call that happened in midfield that really had no impact on the game. Yeah. So I think that's part of it, and we still got a long way to go with education, and it's not just soccer though; it's all sports are dealing with this. Kids are dropping out. It's still 70%. The latest American Pediatric Association study came out in 2024. I mean,
by age 14, right? Yeah. 70% will drop out.
Yeah, and it's still one of the main reasons is an adult behaviors. Yep. And that study was for all sports, not just soccer. But I think that's a big problem still. Yeah. And then, and the other thing is in Europe, those 14, 15-year-old kids are trying to sign the dotted line at like Barcelona or Espanyol. Right. They're not thinking college scholarship. Yeah. They're thinking, I want to play for Espanyol or Cornelio or Barcelona or Manchester City or Manchester United when they're a kid. And over here, the goal is college soccer, right? To get that scholarship. Yeah. And that's fine. It's great to have that goal, but that 14, 15-year-old player over there in Europe and South America or, Eastern Europe, they're in an environment every day where they're competing. Yeah. They're competing to get to a certain level. And it's not a knock on the college game whatsoever. It just, this is the way it is here in our country. Now, is it getting, I don't want to say better, but is it getting maybe directed more toward a pro path? Yes. But we still value education here in this country, and which is great, and we should. But I think that's a big difference. And, like I was at the Panama game last week when they beat us and and you're wondering, how can a little country like Panama even be on the field with us? But those kids have fought.
Mm-hmm.
They've suffered a little bit. They're playing for something. They're playing for their families. They're playing for whatever. And where our American players, there was quite a few that went from just high school age to pro in that professional environment, but it's not enough compared to the rest of the world. And it's funny, we don't have anybody on the U.S. team, men's team, that can pick the lock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is someone that can just create something out of nothing. And now Pulisic's good. He's very talented. We have quite a few talented players. On the women's side, we have we've got some players that can pick the lock. But you even look on the women's side, and the rest of the world caught up quick.
Yes.
Because those players, those female, number one, the club started putting money into the game over there, into the women's game. But number two, that 14, 15-year-old girl isn't thinking about playing at X university. They're thinking about playing professionally for Barcelona or whatever. So they're in that environment where, and they do foster development. Even though they're competing, it's about development. And they make sure that the kids don't play 65 games.
Right. Well, there is when you're attached into a club, say in Europe, as a 15-year-old, they are incentivized. The system is incentivized to think about your long-term development because there is not just a time investment, there's a financial investment in there.
Yes.
Where here it is the reverse.
Yes.
Right? Where it's like a lot of times it's not, and some players, and families are trying to think what's best for my child.
Yeah.
And often what that becomes is, well, I think this club has a higher level of competition. And so we're going to move over there. And so what could happen then, and I've seen it happen to some really good players I've coached at the high school level that move clubs 3 times in 3 years. And sure, are they gaining some things and being around different coaches? Of course.
Right.
But at the same time, who is really then looking out for their long-term development and growth, season over season, or as they move from those critical ages of, between 12 and 16, right? Like of the strides that happen physically with a player and all those kinds of things. And so like that system, when people, it's a complex issue. I think a lot of times people just say, well, we just need to do what the rest of the world does. And it's like, it's just not, we're not starting from zero, right? We're starting with the system, but how does it move and trend towards? Yeah. And to your point, there are some of these, pro pathways that are opening up more, but there's still this divided attention around, college education, playing for a college. You may have somebody who's committed to play at Florida State or Indiana or North Carolina, and then they're having some trials over here with some professional teams and trying to figure out what do I want to be doing, right? So there is a complexity to that is interesting, and it does trickle down, especially when you start getting into those ages between 8 and 14 probably, that it really starts to impact things.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me adding on real quick, Bobby Clark, who was the former University of Notre Dame coach, he took over after Mike Berticelli unfortunately passed away way too soon. I remember there was a club here in Indianapolis. They had a U8 group, and they wanted to go play in a league in Ohio. And one of their directors called me and he said, "Vince, what do you think?" And I said, "Why are you traveling 2.5 hours to play when you got all sorts of competition here?" And I called Bobby Clark, who I admire, and he's in my opinion the best I've ever seen work with 5-year-olds to 25-year-olds, and he can do it with a snap of his fingers. And he makes the game so simple, but he's brilliant in how he does it. Anyway, and I'll never forget the quote. He said, "Vince, kids spend too much time in cars today." And he goes, "Why are they driving more one way than the length of the game? We have soccer is everywhere." And I shared that with the club here, and of course they didn't listen. They went over there. But then I think the next year when they were under 9s, they stayed in Indiana because I think the parents finally realized, oh my goodness, it's quite a commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a big problem. We got kids, getting on planes when they're 13, 14 years old to fly from here to Vegas, for example, to play in a tournament. And yeah, it's a great experience, sure. But they're spending all that time. Kids are traveling from the top of the state to the bottom of the state to play an 80-minute game, U13 C team game. Okay, yeah, I mean it's great, and parents, don't get me wrong, it's great that parents are putting their kids in the environment to play sports, to play soccer, because the research is really clear. The kids that play sports do better in life and in school, and if they stay in it. But I think we've just gotten to this point where we feel like if we don't drive 4 hours one way or 2.5 hours one way, we're going to lose out. Yeah, and it's the FOMO thing, and it's I if anything, somewhere along the line, it'd be great if this is what I mean by, in certain European countries, they say you can only travel so many minutes to go play. Yeah, you can only play so many minutes a week. And we're not, our federation, they're trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. Mm-hmm. They're trying to fix it, but it's already gone.
And it's taken off, and it's making a lot of money as well. Yeah. And, a lot of times, some of the club fees for certain leagues and stuff can be, pretty expensive for the families. Yeah. But the thing that really adds up is the $1,500 a weekend to go just for a league game that's 4 hours away. Yeah. A league game. Yeah. For a lot of that's where we're at. Yeah. Is in these divisions, a lot of times in America, at least in the Midwest, you may be in a high level division, a higher level of competition, but literally a league match is taking you between 4 and 6 hours to get to. That's every weekend, not like once or twice a season tournament. Like this is every weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. And and then the kids that love it will stick with it. Yeah. But then the kids would be like, you know what? I just want to stay home for a weekend. Yeah. And I want to play Xbox, which, okay.
But then some of those kids maybe feel like there's not a place that they could play now. Right. Like a recreational level or something, or lower level club or whatever that doesn't take over your life. And and I think that's the part of the game. Yes. Like the highest level of development, but also like continuing to keep kids engaged in sport because some of those kids are going to be the next generation coaches. They're going to be able to help their own kids, and it's just going to be good for them to be moving their bodies in relationship with other people and all those things. Yeah,
there's a saying, movement's medicine, which, I wish, recess was in every day for kids at school. Yeah. And to your point, one of the reasons why kids drop out of soccer, for example, is if they don't make the travel team or the select team, when they're 11 or 12, or maybe 13, going back to play rec, it's like they're a failure or whatever in their minds. And so instead what we're doing is we're filtering out, we're filtering out these players, but like you said, I mean, these kids, they can still keep playing. Yeah. And then there's an environment for them. That's why I work for U.S. club soccer, but I love high school soccer. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love high school soccer. I was a high school teacher and coach for 17 years total. And I loved the everyday environment. I loved the environment where I could maybe help a kid not just be better in soccer, but a better student, better person. And I think I shared this with you on our phone call that we had. I've rarely seen a kid cry after their last club game, but I see 17-year-old kids, boys and girls, weep and just cry after their last high school game because it means something to them. And I think if someday if we can get there with the club soccer scene, okay, maybe we'll get somewhere. But right now, because they play so many games and they know that, oh, well, we lost this game, we got another one tomorrow. Yeah. And so that they don't. So I know the one thing about education that U.S. Soccer is really, I feel, done a great job in is putting more emphasis on periodization, quality over quantity. Yeah. And, making sure that coaches don't overload their players physically, mentally. Yep. They also have to know where the kids are at socially, emotionally, and so that all is now in the curriculums for the courses. even with the grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
So they've made a really good adjustment in the education, and it's just going to take time.
Yeah.
But we'll teach these coaches the periodization, and they'll submit a 6-week plan, and they'll do okay, and they'll make sure the work ratio is right and everything. And then, but when they go back to their real world, now all of a sudden these parents who are paying X amount of dollars, it's not necessarily that they want results, but they want their kids to play. And I think what a lot of parents unfortunately don't understand, it's they're paying for their coaches, they're paying for their child's experience to be hopefully better coached.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily the games, but it's the training that they get.
Yep.
So the game should be irrelevant.
Yeah.
But but unfortunately, we don't think that way.
Yeah.
And so I think when we have these coaches that are licensed and all that, it doesn't mean that you're a better coach. It means that hopefully you're more educated, and that you realize that if I play a 3 versus 3 game, I probably shouldn't play for 8 minutes. And then if they're not doing it at 8 minutes, yell at them, because really at the end of the day, they're going to play for 2 minutes, if that, at full speed, and then the intensity and focus is going to drop off.
Yeah.
So that's what the courses teach.
Yeah.
They teach like, okay, when is it time to kind of stop, let them rest. So it's kind of like a spin instructor. A spin instructor knows they got you for 45 minutes, but you don't just spin for 45 minutes. Right. You do it for a little bit at a time. You rest. You do another little bit, and all of a sudden, now I'm getting my cardiovascular is getting better, and I feel better, and I can perform. So there's a lot there, but I just think I'm a parent. My son played college soccer. Did I kind of get caught up in it? Yes, I did. And then finally I realized I got to step back, and I just got to let him be a kid and let him make his own life and mistakes and journey. And now he's doing that as a dad now.
Yeah.
So
Vince, as we kind of land the plane on this conversation a little bit, it's been such good nuggets of wisdom. I mean, I think even that, really that viewpoint of in club soccer and travel soccer in general, that parents are paying for the quality of training, and then the match, you just let it be the match, right?
Yeah.
And I love that, and I think it's a good reminder for us as coaches of having good plans for each kid and encouraging them and communicating that appropriately. What advice would you give to anybody who is just dipping their toes in the water of youth soccer coaching, whether it's at the rec level, a travel level, college level, whatever it might be? What kind of encouragement would you give to them as they kind of go on their journey?
Yeah, you don't have to have really a great knowledge of X's and O's or tactics or whatever. Obviously, there will be a time when you do the knowledge of the game and how you can adjust and all that comes in. But when you're a recreation coach, it's more, you coach people first. You coach kids first, the game second. And anybody can do that. And, some of the best coaches that I've ever seen are people that they could barely kick a ball, but my goodness, can they create an environment where, they ask a child a question, or they might say, hey, when you pass the ball, try and keep it as flat as a board. See if you can do that. And so now it's like a different focus for the kid. Yeah. Anyone really could be a coach. Like my wife would say that opposite though, but she's nurturing, she's caring. And when you're, coaching 5 and 6, 7 and 8 year olds, that's really all you need. And even 9 through 18-year-olds, you need someone that's nurturing and caring and care about the kids first. And so as far as like words of encouragement, it's really not about X's and O's, but Y's. And I one of the exercises I do as a coach educator is when I first do a course, and it's not on the script with U.S. Soccer, so they'll probably get mad at me for saying this, but I don't care. So I before we even start, I tell them, all right, what I want you to do is take out a piece of paper and I want you to write a letter as if you were getting it from a player. What would that letter say? And when they read them back, it has really there's not much in there about, you taught me how to win.
Right.
You taught me, how to beat a player 2 versus 1. No, it's thank you, coach, for being supportive of me and helping me through my journey and pushing me and challenging me but you did so in a caring way. Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's, yes, there comes a time when knowledge is important, knowledge of the game. But when you're a youth coach, it's more about just caring about the kids.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, Vince, thank you for jumping on this episode, making the drive, which is awesome and convenient for both of us.
It's a short one. It's good.
And how do people kind of get connected with some of the resources you have and what you've been doing with U.S. club soccer, and what does that look like? Well,
they can always email me. And my email is found on the usclubsoccer.org website. And we are partnering now with the Coach's Voice, so we'll be putting content on there.
Awesome.
I've just written some, I think, called the Foundational Playbook, which is basically a beginner starter kit for coaches.
Awesome.
I'm also creating video content for that as well. So if you go to the Coach's Voice, but I think you have to be a member of U.S. Club Soccer, but I'm not sure how that works. But they can just always email me and I'll send them whatever.
Awesome.
I mean,
awesome.
That's all they have to do.
And Vince means it. Vince and I had never met. We knew we have some mutual friends in the game and all that stuff. And he's been so generous and gracious on just some things personally with my own coaching journey to talk through, but then also with the wealth of resources that he's already created or he knows how to get into your hands. So please contact him by going to the U.S. Club Soccer's website. And we want to say thank you to all of you for tuning into this episode of Touchline Talk. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.